Welcome to the Backstage with Millionaires podcast. I'm Caleb, and today I'm joined by Will Poole. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a technologist. He's a corporate leader. He's an investor. You're originally from Seattle, but started to discover sort of value, I guess, or opportunities in emerging tech ecosystems, like, for example, India, all the way back in 2003. You're also the co-founder and managing partner of Unitus Ventures, as well as Capria Ventures. And we'll talk a little bit about what those things are, what those funds are a little bit later in the conversation. But first, I want to know, back in 2003, you first came to India working with Microsoft. I believe you were leading their Windows global expansion team at that time. So how does India in 2003 compare to India in 2022?
Well, let me give you the reason why I started coming here, because I'm running, in this case, a $10 billion business. It was actually our Windows desktop business, which everybody either loves or hates. And we had 90% market share at the time. Well, when you get 90% market share, you don't try to squeeze the next 10% out of the places where you are. You got to go places where you don't have market share, where the market isn't developed yet, and help it develop. And so I strapped my ass to an airplane along with many of my colleagues, and we went out to emerging markets to understand them and to really see how you could grow the PC market, particularly in consumer and SMB space. And this is long before the mobile revolution came to India, but it was technology was definitely being embraced, and that's how I started coming to Bangalore and actually traveling around India pretty regularly.
Did you guys also look at other ecosystems, other markets at that time, like, for example, China or some other countries, or was it
all of them?
All of them.
I used to do once a quarter world tours going through as they were called, the BRICS at the time, and it's actually BRICMT. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, Mexico, Turkey. Those were the big ones at that moment. Obviously, others have grown up since. Yes, a lot of time in airplanes, and we of course had teams on the ground and everything. But I actually particularly fell in love with India when one of my colleagues on the senior exec staff asked me if I would be effectively the most senior business leader to regularly come to India and really help the subsidiary here get going.
Capria is all over the world, right? You guys are investing in the Middle East and Africa.
Global South, to be clear.
Global South, yeah, exactly. Emerging tech hotspots,
Exactly.
Latin America as well. You've got Southeast Asia. Big emphasis, of course, on India. Capria manages Unitus Ventures, so that makes a lot of sense because that was where you had originally focused your attention on. But in a lot of these ecosystems, do you find that people are looking up to India the way that maybe India looks up to China and the United States? Like, what are they doing over there in India, and sort of trying to see like if they can copy some of those ideas?
That's actually one of the insights that we had with Capria, was that the same kinds of companies are being created in these emerging economies, just at different times. And so if we can bring the knowledge of, again, we have a set of sectors we operate in, and within that set of sectors, we can bring knowledge of that to looking at a new deal, or partnering with somebody who's got deals. We can actually have a little bit of inside information there, right? Historical information, access to information about, what does the margin structure look like for a intracity mobility trucking company in a big city of 8 million people. We know that because we have an investment in one, right? And so we can go and look at another one in another big city in another market and say, hey, do these guys have their shit together or not, right? And so that really was the insight of how we get to have an edge in investing in the Capria strategy. I think that if you were to say what is the pecking order, if you will, of evolved venture ecosystems outside of the U.S. and outside of the global North, China obviously is the biggest by far. And everybody is going to look at that and say, hey, we'd like to imagine that we're going to be the next one of those. I think the Indonesia is very much, likes to think of themselves as the next China, and Vietnam maybe likes to think of themselves as the next Indonesia. How they compare themselves to India, I'd say that they see a lot of similarities. I think that the VC ecosystem, startup ecosystem, is quite a bit stronger, just because of the size of India, and the single market with its 1.4 billion is just can't help but growing companies bigger, faster. Latin America, they certainly are interested, and Africa they're interested in seeing what's happened here and what can be learned from that. Africa is going to be trailing in some areas, but not all. You've got a 1 billion plus people, but you got 54 countries, and so that adds a lot of complexity. But if you had asked me 5 years ago, will there be unicorns in West Africa? I'd say, I don't think so in the next 5 years, and I would be wrong. And so it really has surprised many people how fast things can grow there when the entrepreneurs get it right.
Yeah. So you obviously, I think you and your partners spend a lot of time across the table from startup founders like myself. A lot of us are pitching to you guys. We're sharing our ideas. And I feel like the conversation that happens a lot of the time is, great idea, love it. I see a lot of potential success for you, but it's just not my area of expertise. Or, you know what, it's a little too early for me to invest, but come back, a little bit later on. And it's sort of something that I've heard from a lot of startup founders where they'll pitch to a VC, they'll say no, the VC will say no, and then it's like, good luck, and send them on their way without really telling them what they could do better, or why the pitch didn't go well. And so there's this big question mark. And I wanted to know, as a VC yourself, why does that, and you've also been a startup founder, right? So you've seen both sides. Why does that happen? And how can founders get the most out of their pitch meetings?
Well, let me give you a couple of answers. First of all, if you get a no back, that's actually progress. Okay. There's many VCs will say, oh, we're thinking about it. All right. So one thing we pride ourselves on is saying no. And the quicker your no is, the better, right? Because you don't want to waste their time. But we look at lots of deals. Lots of deals come to us. And one of the ways you get smart about what you want to do next is to look at the founders are smarter than we are in these things, right? So we got to listen to them. But we got to say, look, is the formula right and or not? And it's yes, no, maybe, right? And it's a process you go through. And often the decisions are made fairly quickly on the no front. But the question is that communicated, and is the why communicated? And the answer is some VCs say so, most don't. Now, I can tell you that in India, one of the reasons why you don't always say why no, because they come back and argue with you. And I'm not kidding. Okay, so for a long time when we're first getting going, I'd say, hey guys, we should just give them a little bit more clarity on why no. And they say, there's no margin in that because they want to argue. And so every bullet point you'd give them in feedback, we'll come back and say, no, you got it wrong. Maybe you did get it wrong. It's still a no. Okay. There's nobody for who's heard a no that's gone back and reconvinced that VC to change their mind based on their arguments against why no. Okay. So that would be one reason why people don't give that information.
That's a great advice though for Indian startup founders. Don't argue with.
There's no margin in it. Now look, if you came to me and pitched me a business, and I would really try to say, look, it's not a fit, and here's the 3 or 4 reasons why it's not a fit. Right now, not a fit is different than I think you're not smart. Right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying your business is just not a business that fits into our portfolio. Now, one other thing that founders can do is look at the portfolio of the VC. You would be amazed at how many founders will come and pitch us things via email. We don't let them in person, that just aren't anything like anything we've invested in ever. Why would they possibly think that we'd invest in that? So, somebody comes and pitches investing in a brick and mortar hospital, and sorry, we're an asset-light venture capital company. Why do you think we'd want to build a hospital, right? Well, you have a healthcare company, right? So I think that that's an important thing. Is if a founder invests enough time to understand what we do, and then brings us an idea, they'll be much more likely to get some positive feedback from us and saying, hey, here's why it doesn't fit. Right? We might say, hey, we've looked at 6 other companies like this, and we think it's going to be a bloodbath. That might be one reason. That might be good information for the founder to know that, right? We might say, oh, we actually have invested in a company like this already, and it's competitive. And we, as respect to founders, we don't invest in directly competing companies. So there's a lot of reasons why a VC is going to say no, and that are helpful for a founder to learn.